Today's menu for Nathalie Dupree Cooks for Family and Friends is rather old-fashioned in a way. It's a real meat and potatoes kind of meal, hearty and satisfying to the soul as well as to the body. I'm going to start this very easy, wonderful meal with a strawberry peach crisp. First thing you do is preheat your oven to 375 degrees. Then in an 8-inch square pan, mix 2 cups of sliced strawberries and 2 cups of sliced peaches. Here they are all together. These are lovely, fresh Georgia peaches. And a tablespoon of lemon juice. I have a little gadget here that's nice for juicing a lemon if you want just a little piece. 3/4 a cup of sugar. 1/4 a cup of whole wheat flour. I always measure my flour out onto wax paper. It really makes a big difference just in getting it organized. And I'm using flour in 2 parts, so it helps. 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon and a dash of nutmeg. Let me just show you how to grate nutmeg here. You should try to use fresh nutmeg because canned nutmeg is just nowhere near as fresh as the freshly grated. Use your hands if you have to. Now, in a bowl, mix together a cup of whole wheat flour, 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar, 1/2 a cup of quick oats. This is our pretend that it's good for you with the whole wheat flour and the oats. I can't really guarantee it, but it gives the aura of being good for you. And 1/2 a cup of melted unsalted butter. Why it is that we say that if there are oats in it, that it'll be better for you than with 1/2 a cup of melted butter, I don't know. But I like lying to myself, and I presume that you like to do the same thing. Now you make this little mixture, and then you just sprinkle it over the fruit. Come on now. Pull together there a little bit more for me. I just want to get it mixed. Sprinkle it over the fruit, and bake it at 375 for 35 minutes. Let's get this all in here. You know, ovens vary tremendously. I don't sometimes feel when I say 35 minutes at 375 that it sounds like some sort of a guarantee that you don't have to look at the oven for 35 minutes. But in fact, the top of this got just a little brown at 375 or 35 minutes. It's a different oven. So always check your oven a couple of minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes before it, quote, should be done, because every oven's different, every pan is different, and the top should really be a lovely golden. Serve it with this whipped cream or ice cream. How bad could that be? And then, of course, that justifies, the oats justify the ice cream. Now, the lovely beet dish here. Take and wash your beets very thoroughly and dry. Now in France and in Europe, usually they cook the beets for you. They don't even sell raw beets most of the time, but here we have to buy our beets raw. And you don't want to cut into the beet itself because it just gets out this red stuff that gets all over your hands. You want to cut enough leave enough on so that it doesn't bleed. So just trim the roots and the stems slightly and cut it well. Then you rub it with olive oil. I'm going to do this so that my hands don't get red, but usually at home I just rub them up with my hands. And then put them in a foil-lined baking pan and bake them at 400 degrees for 45 minutes to an hour. Check them to see that they're done, that they have a little give to them when you push through. And then when they're cool enough to handle, you trim the stems and you peel them. Don't wash them. You'll just make more mess and you won't accomplish anything anyway. Then make this lovely dressing. I have a shallot, which I have already chopped, and it's in here. It was really part of a shallot because you only need a teaspoon. And then a little pinch of kosher salt, which is here, or just plain salt if you want to. And a little 1/2 teaspoon here of Dijon mustard, 3 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, a tablespoon of lemon juice, and a good grinding of black pepper, and the oil there, and 4 tablespoons of olive oil, which should have been beaten in gradually, but I forgot. Now this is kind of an all-in-one thing so that you don't have to wash the food processor bowl. which some people seem to hate more than death itself, and you can do all of this in a whisk. But grating these beets by hand is really a pain, so if you don't have a food processor, you'll be sorry. Take here, and I'm just going to take this one that I've already peeled and checked out and stick it in the bottom here and show you how you would grate the whole thing. See, and then it grates right into the lovely mixture. Save this little beet part. You can use it for a garnish for something else if you'd like to, or else just grate it on down yourself. If you beat in the olive oil slowly, you have an emulsified dressing which holds together better than if you do it like the way that I did. And so normally you wouldn't need this separate bowl that I've got going right here, and you'd save on washing your dishes. Now, put this on your mixed greens and reds here. I love the fact that we can now get all these lovely lettuces all over the United States. And try to get some nice tiny green beans. I've got them boiling away here. Put them into, if you can get them, they're called haricot verts. My French is dreadful, isn't it? You cut them about 3/4 of an inch long, as I do here. Put them into boiling water for just 5 to 7 minutes. Then you rinse them under cold water. That just sets the color, and drain them well. Then when you're ready to serve, you just toss the beets and the beans together, and they're right here. Or if you'd like to, you can leave them separately as we had them. Just toss them together there, and then just sprinkle them with some green onions. It's a very pretty dish. It's a little different. People really like it. I knew I couldn't keep it so that I didn't handle those beets. Didn't you know that too? So there we are. I'll have red hands for the rest of the day. Let me go ahead and tell you about our potatoes. This is a wonderful garlic flavored potato cake. You peel 2½ pounds of potatoes and cut them into very fine julienne. I'm doing it with a food processor. It's that same blade. You can either use the grating blade or the julienne blade. Or if you want to do it by hand or with a hand grater, you can, or a mandolin. I'm always afraid of mandolins. Then you chop 3 or 4 garlic cloves and chop parsley and oregano. Oh, a nice quantity. 3 or 4 tablespoons of each if you'd like, just whatever tastes good. About 2 heaping teaspoons of parsley, I guess. And you just combine all of this here. Maybe a real giant tablespoon of oregano, and then a nice quantity of salt and pepper. I'm just going to reach over and get my pepper. I forgot it earlier. You will, of course, always remember your salt and pepper, and I'm sure you always use freshly grated pepper. Now, butter a sheet of aluminum foil, and I'm going to grease it. I find this much easier. I didn't used to. Hope that didn't shine in your eyes. And heat 4 tablespoons of olive oil in a heavy pan and add these potatoes. They really are good. If you want to use that nonstick stuff in the, don't you love cooking with the sound? I like cooking with the sound as much as I do with anything else. I'm going to go back and show you how to chop that garlic and that parsley. I think I'll have time. And then you cover it with the buttered foil. Put this right here. And you press it down with a heavy pan. I just use another pan, to weight it. You're just trying to glue it all together. And you cook it until it's very well browned, about 10 minutes. Then you bake it put it in the oven and bake it at 450 degrees until it's tender and the bottom is crisp, so that when you bite into it, you have the crispness on the outside and then you have the tender potatoes on the inside. It's about 20 to 25. I mean, how bad can that be? About 20 to 25 minutes. And then you just turn it and flip it onto the serving plate. Put your platter on top here, and this pan is cool. I'm smart. I've gotten wise in my old age. I try not to do these things with hot things anymore. But for you, do it when it's hot, because you want to serve it immediately when it's hot with the first flush. You can make this ahead and reheat it, but try not to have it refrigerated in between, because there is a difference. It does reheat in the microwave, but I maybe make it a couple of hours ahead and then leave it in the pan, or an hour ahead and leave it in the pan. But it's best served immediately. There's a wonderful chef in California at the Larkspur Inn who has written a great book called Breakfast, Lunch, and Dinner, and his name is Bradley Ogden, and he's an authority on American food. I'd like you to meet him.
Potatoes. What better vegetable than potatoes? There are so many different varieties. I know, Natalie, we were talking yesterday. It's probably the next best thing to sex. But today I just want to give you a little bit of some pointers. We have a very few varietals here. Again, there's over about 1,000 varieties of potatoes. But I happen to just pick a few of my favorites. This is a red creamer potato, which is in every market and every store, which happens to be one of my favorite potatoes. It's great if you take this. I serve this at the Lark Creek Inn. People come in and ask for platters of this. It's just mashed red potatoes and garlic, and then we just almost exactly like mashed potatoes. But there's one key thing that needs to be done when you're doing mashed potatoes, and that's taking the potatoes after they're boiled and drying it out in the oven on like a sheet pan. And so there's no excess water. It'll make for a much more mealier potato and more of a robust flavor. And then going on to that, we can also roast this with some fresh herbs. We have a Yukon Gold, which is great for frying, for baking, for grating it up and making like pancakes out of it with like homemade apple butter. And then we have a sweet Georgia potato, sweet Georgia jewel potato, and again, you can use this for mashing. You can add a little bit of horseradish to it. We'll add a little accent to it. You can fry it. You can cut it into chips, and it'll be for thin potato chips with it. And then we have a white rose potato. Again, it's a very creamy potato. It's good for home fries and old-fashioned potato salad if you add bacon, and you can also add arugula to it. It's great with the barbecued meats. Then we have a Texas star potato, which is like a russet potato Idaho. It's great for baking and for French fries. And again, but these are some of the varietals. And but there's so we can go on and on and talk about potatoes, and there's so many different preparations of it. But I'll let Natalie do that. And Natalie, I just want to thank you for allowing me to be on your show. And maybe next time we can actually prepare some of these and talk about some of the more technical things to do with potatoes. Thank you.
For nearly a century, LeCreuset's colorful French cookware has been a favorite in kitchens around the world. From its bold finishes and uncompromised quality to its easy-to-clean materials, the brand's range of iconic products are as easy to use as they are to love.
There's so much to know about food. Now, I'm going to do chicken fried steak, and this is nothing on which there is any clear-cut definition. This is something about which there is massive debates. Is chicken fried steak deep fat fried, or is it not, and is it big and crusty, or is it cooked in less fat? And those debates can never be resolved. So I'm going to just say that this is Merle Ellis's recipe, and I'm doing what he says. Now, the first thing that that's getting out of it, isn't it? The first thing that you do is season half a cup of flour with a teaspoon of salt and some freshly ground black pepper. And just take some of this flour and pound it in. Now, this meat has been run through one of those machines that they have at the grocery store. This is round, and round is from the rump or the leg, really, of the meat. And it's a very full flavored piece of meat, and it's what we call these days a lean piece of meat. So you can just pound it with one of these gadgets, one of these mallets, all over. Or, here we go, or you can take and use a knife. This has already been, those gadgets are they're really kind of like mini guillotines, I guess you could say, that they have in the store. But they really help because they cut all the connective tissue, which we're also doing. There's very little that can make this tough anymore. So you just pound that flour in. You might do a slightly better job than I do. Here we go, just a little bit more here. And then, and I might use a little heavier plate at home. I'm kind of chary of this glass one. And then cut it into 6 serving sizes. So 6 serving pieces here. And just cut down the center there. I think I'll just cut off that fat. Here too. They're really trimming meat quite differently now than they used to. So let's get that out of here. Okay. Now, beat together a couple of eggs in I use pie plates. I think they're a wonderful thing, pie plates. I use them a lot. No, for a lot of things. Then beat together a couple of eggs and 2 tablespoons of cream. Just let's add that in there. And this will kind of coat the whole meat. And then next I'm going to crush these saltines. I'm going to get it organized first. I put them in a plastic bag, but what you can also do, of course, is just take a rolling pin and put them between wax paper or in a bowl, or do them in the food processor. So I've just crushed some saltines in here, to make about 2 cups, which is here. I've got my fat on. It's about a half a cup of vegetable oil. It's in a nice heavy skillet. Can be cast iron, or I really like these LeCreuset pans, which are nearly cast iron because they're heavy. That's what we're really saying. Then you take the meat and you dredge it in any remaining flour, and then you dip it right into the egg mixture. Here, I'll do this two-handed. I'll dip it into the egg mixture. Kind of try to get it evenly coated. I didn't do such a great job there. And then into the crumbs. This is delicious. It's so good. We had someone working with us from New York City who had never had this before. He kept avoiding eating it. Finally, he had it the other day and he loved it. Now, you put this meat into the fat, and can you hear it? It's got a real sizzle. You even want more of a sizzle. You want it to be singing. You want that meat to just have a lot of joy when it hits the pan. So let's go ahead here, add our second piece. And of course, you would add all 6 pieces. Kind of have to fit them in. Try not to get them necking in the pan, no touching there, but do get them all in. You might want to use one size up pan. You won't have as many pans on your burners to crowd each other. Now you brown it very well on one side, and then you turn it. And I don't turn with a fork. Merle and I have great debates about this, but I don't turn with a fork. I say if you pierce it, you let the juices out. And he says, Natalie, you have already pounded that to death. What are you talking about? So it just has a lot to do with how you're trained, I think. You just turn it and you browned the second side. So here we are. That's 2 sides browned. And then you cover it and you reduce the heat. And that's what keeps this nice and moist and tender, because this is normally a kind of a tough piece of meat, although it's lean. And you just cook it until they're cooked through. And here, over here, we have this nice meat which has been drained. You remove it from the skillet and put it on paper bags to drain, and try to make sure that they're not recycled paper bags, because somebody told me that you shouldn't use recycled paper bags. But it's hard to keep up with all the things that are happening in our industry. Now, you saute a sliced onion in the same pan. You take out all the fat. And I've just got a sliced onion here. You can see it. I know you know what a sliced onion looks like. And then you just, when that's sauteed, you pour off all but 3 tablespoons of fat. That looks about right to me. You know, then you add 3 tablespoons of flour. And you cook it for a minute or 2. I'm not going to be able to cook it as long as I'd like. And this is really the base. This is really the roux, a roux. If you want to get it just a little nutty brown, it really makes it a much nicer, better flavored kind of a dish. So get it just a little nutty brown if you possibly can, and then go ahead and stir in the cream and the chicken broth. It's really nice. And there are 2 ways to do this. If you cook the roux about, I'm going to turn that up just a little bit. If you cook the roux a minute or 2 before you add the liquid, and then add very hot liquid, you don't have to stir it as much when it comes to the boil. Or alternately, if you cook the roux not very long and you want to add cold liquid and then keep stirring it till it comes to the boil. Now you want to get all this goodness off the bottom. Don't try to strain that out. I don't know. This is not the kind of a dish where you want smooth gravy. Some people always want smooth gravy, but not I. So you just keep stirring that till it comes to a nice boil, and I'll probably have to come back to it in a minute, but I'm working right on the same stove. And I heated up that liquid so that I wouldn't have to watch it every single second. And just a choice about what you do. But then you have to dirty your 2 more pans. I put them in the microwave to heat them up. And you stir in a little Worcestershire sauce, a little hot sauce, and season it with salt and pepper. Now it's delicious. It's really nice. Now, over here I have some crunchy garden peas and green onions. It's a nice, simple recipe. And you just cook it differently according to the time of year. Obviously, there are times when you can't get fresh peas, like in the winter. So you have to use frozen. I'm not crazy about canned ones, but I do find frozen ones very acceptable. So you chop 3 green onions or scallions, and I'm just going to chop the green part of the green onions here. But if you want more onions, you can use both parts. And the way that I'm going to do that is just take my knife and slice right on down here, sort of strip it down, and then just cut across. And it's done. So just get your green onions or scallions. Green onions, you know, have large bulbs, and they're round, and they're really the baby big onion, where scallions are a different thing altogether and have kind of a skinny bulb. Here's my sauce. It's boiled, so let me just show you this and let me give it a good whisk and let it thicken. Boy, it sure is good. I'll tell you what. Now, go ahead and add green peas to about enough olive oil to cover the bottom of the skillet, maybe 5 to 6 tablespoons to 2 cups of peas. So you add your peas, and then you add your green onions. I think I'll add a little more green onion. Green onion's real classic with peas. Normally you cook the peas with some green onions in boiling water, and this is just a little different way of really intensifying the flavor. And you could put this in the microwave. Then you add salt and pepper to taste. Okay? And you saute them over high heat about 2 to 3 minutes. And then you add maybe 3 teaspoons. It's a lot. It looks more like tablespoons to me. Basil, when it's chopped, really chops down very much. It shrinks enormously, so you have to be careful to not over basil it. And about 3 tablespoons of Parmesan, or some hot pepper flakes. So I'm going to add this Parmesan to it, and then I'm going to go back and tell you about this is 3 tablespoons. Always measure carefully. And I'm going to add this garlic to it. I think I want that in there. Can't remember if I want that in there, but it was on the plate. If not, it'll just add flavor to it. There's nothing as far as I'm concerned that you can't add more parsley to. And there you are. It's a very nice dish. Now, if these were old peas, you would cover them for 1 minute. Cover them for 1 minute if they're young peas, and just leave the lid on longer if they're old peas. If they're frozen, I wouldn't consider them old because usually they're picked and frozen right away. Ooh, that sauce is just lovely and delicious. Gosh, is that great looking. Oh boy, it makes me hungry just to think about it. Now let me just show you some of this. Here's the garlic, and I just want to show you how to peel this garlic clove. You just take your knife and you smash it. There you go. Got your garlic there. Then go root in, and you go into the root and cut it, and then chop it just like you did the green onion. Or you just take your knife and walk your knife right over the board. Excuse me. Pardon me. Don't you know, what's wrong with someone that says pardon me to an inanimate object like I just did? Okay, here's some basil. Those are just a couple basil leaves. And I'm just going to roll those up to make it easier for myself to chop. And then just take and slice that across. And then like this. And then chop. I find basil one of the harder herbs to chop. Now, Parmesan, this is Parmigiano Reggiano, and I just cut it in a small wedge for myself. So you can hand grate it or grate it in the food processor. And you really want to grate your own Parmesan if you possibly can, because it just makes all the difference in the world. Now, Pine Mountain cheese loaf. Pine Mountain's a mountain in Georgia, and this is the recipe of a student of mine, Annie's. And what I did was I emptied a carton of plain yogurt into a piece of cheesecloth, or in this case, this great yogurt draining gadget, and it has something else that you can just drain into, but it's wonderful, isn't it? It's better than a piece of cheesecloth because it's much easier to wash. Or you can put it into something with a piece of cheesecloth. You can use a giant carton of 16 ounces, or in this case, I just wanted to do an 8-ounce carton, so that's what I did. Now, you suspend it over a dish if it's in cheesecloth and let it drain overnight in the refrigerator. And you've got a substitute for cream cheese that's low calorie. Everybody asks me how I lost weight, and that's the way that I did it. Now, for this wonderful Pine Mountain loaf, you beat together 8 ounces of this yogurt cheese. So did you get a good look at that? It's like cheese. That's what it is. And I use this for my snacking rather than cream cheese. And I don't believe in diets, but I do believe in looking at what you're eating and seeing if there isn't something that will satisfy you that has a few less calories. I don't believe in rigid diets. And then you grate a half a cup of Parmesan cheese in the food processor. And, I don't want to put it in there at all. I'll take it back. Forget that I did that. Don't get confused. And blend together 1 1/4 cups of tightly packed basil with the 2 to 3 garlic cloves and the Parmesan. And then you add 3 tablespoons of olive oil. Let's see if I can get this all off here and do this real quickly. And it all comes together in a nice looking thing like that. It's kind of a pesto. So there. Then you dampen 2 12-inch pieces of cheesecloth and put them into a mold. And here we are with this. And you line a 2 1/2 quart mold. You want straight sides on it. You spread about 1/8 of the mixture. What did I do with that? Here it is. In the bottom of the cheese mixture, in the bottom here. And then you add a layer of the pesto, which is what that really is. Pesto is really garlic, basil, and Parmesan cheese. And you just keep repeating it until the mold is filled, which is here. So you just keep layering it up. And then when you're all through, you press. I'll do one more layer here. How about that? When you're all through, you fold the ends of the cloth over. Oh, it's just delicious. Take a little bit more from here, and press it slightly to compact it, and you till it until it's firm, about 1 to 2 hours. If it stands much longer, the cloth dries out and causes the green to bleed into the cheese. And then you turn it onto a serving dish, remove the cheesecloth, and what you have is a very nice, very pretty homemade cheese. You can serve it that way or this way, but I think it's a little prettier this way. And there you are. And it's much better for you than something a little richer. I think you're going to love it. Serve it with slices of French bread, and you'll be very happy. Garnish with a little basil leaves, and that's it. Start with the Pine Mountain cheese loaf, then chicken fried steak with crunchy garden peas and green onions, a garlic-flavored potato cake, and a beet salad vinaigrette. To round it all off, a simple dessert of strawberry peach crisp.